Welcome in, everyone. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report. And what a game. Merry Christmas, guys, and Merry Christmas to the Ravens. They get the win 31-2 over the Houston Texans. And if you're a Texans fan, I'm sorry. I feel for you. You've got the playoff spot locked up, you got the division locked up, but I don't know how good I would feel going into the postseason if I was them. Meanwhile, the Ravens are getting hot. They are getting better and better after the bye. I think that bye is proving to be huge for them, and I don't know, man. But the score 31-2, and those 2 points. I wanted to make a point about this. Those 2 points, the safety was a God. I mean, almost a cruel hope offered by Ravens and Lamar. Because if you think about it this way, right? So we start off and we get the touchdown by Henry. We just dog walk him down the field, boom, in for the touchdown. Then we're forced to kick a 52-yard field goal in the next possession. And then we punt on the following possession. So, I mean, Houston Texans are like, okay, our defense is starting to kind of catch up with their offense. They're kind of starting to, it's 10-0, but it's not out of hand yet. And then Tommy Townsend sends that massive 70-yard punt and pins us all the way back on like the 2-yard line. And the very next play, they get a safety out of their rookie Kamari Lassiter. And I mean, if you're a Texans fan, you have hope. You're like, wow, it's technically a one-score game, and our offense isn't looking terrible. The run game and Stroud's passing accuracy is not fantastic, but you know what? He's warming up. He's getting into it. All right. But then they go down that whole next drive, right? And they're going down the field. And then our Darius Washington just stonewalls Joe Mixon at the 1-yard line out of bounds, just knocks him out of bounds. And after we stop them there, we go on to score 21 unanswered points on them. Their drives following that 4th and goal for the rest of the game go as this: punt, end of the first half, interception, punt, 4th down stop, punt, end of the game. So again, those 2 points, now they had opportunities to score, right? But they were in the mode where if they kicked field goals, they had at least 2 opportunities. I know that they were well within field goal kicking range, but where does that get you when you're trading field goals for touchdowns? So they had to stay aggressive, but our defense was just bend but don't break, and they were phenomenal in this game. So I did want to mention some of those stats by the Texans, because it was a pretty bad day against the Ravens defense. And ever since we've made those changes halfway through the season, or a little bit over halfway or whatever, after the Bengals game, after those changes, this defense, and especially the secondary, have been completely different. Since those 421 yards that we gave up to the Bengals in that game, we have given up 181 the first time to the Steelers, 202 to the Chargers, 112 to the Eagles, 181 to the Giants, 198 to the Steelers, and then in this game, Stroud passes for 185 yards. He goes 17 for 31, so accuracy was a massive issue all game for him. But 185 yards against this secondary, no touchdowns, obviously, 1 interception, shout out to Hamilton, we'll get to him in a bit, and then 5 sacks. Which, again, going into this game, I didn't mention it in my preview, but they certainly talked about it in a couple other shows, including the 410 Sports Talk guys. This offensive line has been horrible in protecting CJ Stroud. He is the second most sacked quarterback in the league, and the Ravens have the second most sacks in the league. It doesn't feel like it sometimes, but I mean, they were getting after him, and it wasn't one guy beating his guy every time. 5 different Ravens got sacks. Stroud ends the day with a passer rating of 59.2. Running the ball wasn't any much better. Mixon, who I continue to call Joe Mid-Mixon, because against us, he just does nothing pretty much all the time. 9 attempts, 26 yards, 2.9 yards per attempt. His longest was for 8. Dameon Pierce in backup position for him was 5 for 13, 2.6 yards per carry. I mean, they just were not doing anything against us on the ground. And through the air, it was some production, but it amounted to nothing. Nico Collins probably had one of his quietest days, 3 for 6, 59 yards, and his longest was for 30. So that's half of his yardage right there. Mechie, 5 for 48. Hutchinson, 2 for 21. Woods, 2 for 21. Schultz, 2 for 21. And then Mixon was out there as well, 2 for 13. Just domination by this Ravens defense. And speaking of domination by the defense, the point differential since we've come back from this bye is astounding. Everybody was talking before this season started, and even approaching the bye week. Man, 3 games in 10 days is going to be tough, and it is, but apparently not, because we have dominated in every game since the bye. The point differential basically is 100 to 33. So we have scored 100 points in those 3 games, and our opponents combined have scored 33. So I don't know what they all talked about on the bye week, or everybody just went to sleep for an entire week or something, but man, they were ready for this 3-game stretch. And I think they're going to be ready for this Browns team at the end of the season as well. And the great thing about this defense, one of the best things that I've seen in especially this game, is I talked about this on the way into the game. I wanted someone other than mainly Marlon Humphrey, but someone that was outside the big 3 of Humphrey, Van Noy, and Hamilton to make some game-defining plays. And while I am happy that Hamilton got his first interception on the season, second to last game, but apparently Christmas is the time that he gets interceptions, because he did so against the 49ers. I think he had 2 against the 49ers. But I mean, the defensive line was basically putting pressure on Houston the whole game. 5 different players ended the day with a sack. It was just an all-around effort by this defense. Roquan Smith had a sack. Van Noy had a sack. Board had a sack. Matabike had a sack. Owe had a sack. He's got 9 on the season now. But Humphrey, I mean, he had a pass deflection, he had a tackle for loss, and he had a forced fumble, which was he just punched the ball and it went out of bounds, but they still counted as a forced fumble. He laid the wood on a couple guys, but other than that, I mean, Wiggins had a pass deflection, Roquan Smith tackle for loss, Van Noy tackle for loss, Kyle Hamilton had the interception, like we mentioned, and a pass deflection. It was just basically everybody contributing. It was an all-around great defensive effort by pretty much everybody. And this secondary is violent, man. This secondary is full of guys who are ready, willing, and able to tackle everybody. Anytime they did make a pass anywhere out into like the flat, all you saw the next second was one of the members of the secondary just flying up to just take the man down. And more often than not, I did see a missed tackle by Marlon in this game. But more often than not, it was seek and destroy for the secondary. So, and speaking of other players looking good and really holding their own now, Tucker looks great. His kicking looks back to normal. He looks back to his dominant self. It was smooth. It was, everything looked natural. I almost think I said this to a buddy of mine, it almost looked like he was over kicking, like he was trying too hard for something, because now it's just smooth and he just kicks and it goes right to where we're used to, just straight down the middle, plenty of leg. And I don't know if it was taking him off of all of the kickoffs or something like that, but he mentioned, Tucker mentioned and Stroud's been, or Stout has been in there doing a lot of the kickoffs now, or at least they've been trading off on him. I don't know if that's what it is or what, but whatever they're doing, keep it up, because I mean, 52-yarder earlier in the season. Tell me if we were in week 6 or week 7, would you trust Tucker with a 52-yarder? I know a lot of Ravens fans, if they were honest with themselves, would not. But he looked good, and he looks back to himself. Let's just hope that this keeps going. I'd love for him to continue to make all the kicks, obviously. I mean, who doesn't? But, keep that confidence high going into the postseason, because we are going to need him. Speaking of guys that are in need maybe of some confidence, um, Keaton Mitchell he looks healthy and he looks fast, but he doesn't quite look comfortable playing football yet. And I'm not saying he's flinching or anything. I'm just saying he doesn't look like he's running as freely as he was last season. He looks like he's a bit more hesitant, which is understandable. I mean, he had a bad injury. Coming back from that is tough mentally, more so than physically sometimes for a lot of players. I hope they continue to use him in a rotation. Obviously, we hope that he'll, comes back, makes a full recovery, is okay, not just rush him back or whatever, but that was a pretty wicked hit that he took. And I just hope he's, you know, medically okay. Because that was a pretty scary one. But Mitchell, he's he's gonna get back to it. Um, and again, not to say too much on the confidence thing, but Lamar Jackson didn't throw the ball very much today. He didn't have to, right? He only threw to the tight ends three times, and he had 3 completions and 2 touchdowns. As far as yardage to his tight ends, he had 3 targets, 3 receptions for 77 yards and 2 touchdowns, basically. We'll get into that in a second, but Lamar and his tight ends, man, like they need them in the postseason because they present such a difficult matchup for opponents. You got to worry about Bateman's speed and his deep threat ability and their chemistry with Lamar. You got to worry about Flowers everywhere on the field. And then obviously the fact that Henry took a couple of nice little passes and turned them into good positive yardage. But to worry about the tight ends and all of that and Lamar, that's a really dangerous offense. And it shows because the Texans defensive numbers were flat, dude. They couldn't really stop us at all. I mean, some of their best players, Kamar Lassiter, he had that tackle for loss. He had that safety. That was a big play. That was probably the biggest play on defense for them. If you want to include the sack that Will Anderson only credited him with half a sack, and he had 2 tackles for loss. But Danielle Hunter was a non-factor. 2 tackles, 1 solo, non-factor. That's incredible. But the numbers I got to talk about first is how explosive this offense is. This Ravens offense is extremely explosive. And when we talk about explosive, that is an official term in the NFL. And correct me if I'm wrong, but an explosive play on offense for the passing game is 20 yards or more, and running is 15 yards or more. So that's what's a explosive play in the NFL. And I have down here some of their explosive plays just from tonight. Lamar has a 25-yard run. Deep pass to Flowers, 27 yards. Derrick Henry, left guard, rushed for 20 yards. Henry, again, up the middle for 17 yards. The 67-yard pass to Andrews, which was, I believe, his second longest career catch. He had a 74-yarder when he was a rookie. But since then, I think this is his longest reception, second longest reception of his career. And then Lamar Jackson, the pass to Mitchell for 28 yards. And all 6 of those plays, 3 runs and 3 passes, all 6 of those plays were in the first half. So we have 6 explosive plays in the first half. And then just to start the second half, these aren't all explosive plays by definition, but just this sequence shows you how dangerous this Ravens team is. Stroud throws an interception to Kyle Hamilton. The next play, Derrick Henry, 13-yard gain. And then Lamar Jackson takes it over on the other side, on the right side, for 48 yards and a touchdown. Like, that's how dangerous this team is. It went from, okay, Texans are going to start with the ball to start the second half. The third play of that second half, interception, and then 13 yards, and then 48. Lamar was gone. 21.25 miles per hour, I think they recorded him at for the touchdown. And Lamar said he was jogging, which once he got out in front, once he got his head back around, he took two steps where his turnover just changed and he hit another gear, which we don't see very often because he's always looking around, almost too much sometimes, but I get it. That's how he stays safe. He doesn't take those big hits, despite what the media wants to tell you, that his style is dangerous for him. Lamar takes less hits than pretty much any other quarterback in the league. Ask Josh Allen. Josh Allen takes big hits. CJ Stroud, ask him. But yeah, this is an extremely explosive offense. And, looking at the numbers for the day, it's again, they are explosive, but they're efficient too. Lamar ends the day 10 for 15, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, sacked once, passer rating of 143.9. Like, that's, even box score watchers, like, that's insanely good. I mean, we can count. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games this season with a passer rating over 100. 12 games. The 3 games where he didn't, he had a 90.8 against Kansas City in the first game of the season. He had an 81.4 against the Raiders, and he had a 66.1 in their first game against Pittsburgh. Other than that, he's 101.3 and higher. 2 in the 158s. A 154, which was against the Giants, and then Cincinnati's was a 141. So I'm not even counting this game. This game's not even on there yet, and this was a 143.9. So 143.9, that's his 4th best passer rating on the season. That's insane. I'm not going to delve into the whole MVP conversation. If you've watched my videos on the channel about Lamar Jackson, you already know how I feel about it. But, instead of putting my opinion out there, I'll ask you a good question. If you are the defensive coordinator, and this might be slightly biased if you're a Ravens fan, I get it. But if you're a defensive coordinator for any other team in the league, right, you got to prep for a game. Who would you rather face? Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson? 9 times out of 10, I'm pretty sure they would rather face Josh Allen. And that should tell you something. Lamar Jackson, and especially with this offense, but Lamar Jackson presents so many more problems for opposing defenses. Getting back into the numbers, though, Derrick Henry, 27 rushing attempts, 147 yards, and the elusive touchdown. Hadn't had a touchdown in 5 games, if you can believe it. Got his 16th on the season and his 14th rushing touchdown on the year. Lamar Jackson, quiet day from him. Only 4 attempts, 87 yards. He's averaging 21.8 yards per carry. Obviously, he had the 1 for 48 yards for the touchdown. But even if you take away the 48-yarder, I mean, excuse me, you're looking at what, 79, 39 yards on 3 attempts. I mean, the dude he had a 25-yarder before that. I mean, he was just dangerous, dude. And that's what happens if you give Henry the ball a bunch of times during the game and he starts chewing up the defense. You got to worry about Henry, and then you forget about Lamar, which is the worst thing you can do if you're an NFL defense, is forget about Lamar. But Mitchell, again, 11 attempts, 20 yards. Not sure if he's 100% back mentally and everything. Ali also, he kind of left with like an injury, but they didn't really say what it was. He was on the sideline with his helmet on, so it might have just been cautionary. But he had one rushing attempt for -3 yards. I think we got a little bit predictable with the run game. But, I mean, counting this up here, that's what? That 32. We ran the ball 43 times? Is that right? Yeah, I think so. 43 times. That's why we only threw it 15 times. Andrews, again, I brought up the tight end numbers earlier. 2 for 2, 68, touchdown. And it's funny because you would think the 67-yarder was the touchdown. No, it was the 1-yarder. Zay Flowers, 2 for 5, 31 yards, hit that big 27-yarder. Keaton Mitchell, 1 for 1, 28 yards. Derrick Henry, 2 for 2, 18 yards. Anthony Miller, 1 catch, 16 yards. And I saw this on Reddit before I started recording. He now has more receiving yardage than Deontay Johnson for the Ravens. So let's clap it up for him. Good job, Anthony Miller. We like you better anyway, because you sat on the practice squad after preseason for the whole season, pretty much. And when you were called upon to come in as a very clear backup, you didn't waver and you got a first down out of it. So good for you. Lamar was hyped as heck for him on the sideline. Um, Quiet day for Bateman, 1 for 1, 12 yards, and Isaiah Likely 1 for 1, 9 yards and a touchdown. But again, when Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson are running the way that they are, you don't need to pass the ball a bunch. You don't need to do anything with that. You control the whole game. So this game was just, it was amazing. It was fun to watch. It was the cherry on top. I guess retrospectively, the cherry on the bottom. I don't know. I don't know how you'd say that, because like the Steelers losing to the Chiefs, which was hilarious, by the way. Not only hilarious because they lost, but because they were a circus going on out there. You got Fryermuth friggin' slamming his helmet. You got Pickens. Oh, Pickens is back. Thank goodness, right? That's that spark that those Steelers needed. Look at him causing tantrums and getting mad on the sideline already. God, what a great teammate that guy is. I'm sure they're going to go really far in the playoffs. Anyway, but speaking of that, again, that's the cherry on the bottom, because then we had our whole sundae and ice cream on top of the cherry. I don't know, whatever. This team is getting hot at the right time. These Ravens are rolling after the bye, and that's what they're going to need, because the postseason is just around the corner, and we're going to talk about it. So let's get in there and let's talk about some potential opponents, potential paths for opponents going into this last week of the season. So we don't know the outcome of the games on Sunday coming up this week. We don't know about the rest of the games. The Bills face the Broncos. I'm sorry, not the Bills. The Bengals face the Broncos. Whatever else. The Dolphins face the Browns. That doesn't matter. But when we get to week 18, the Browns come to Baltimore and the Bengals go to Pittsburgh. Now, a couple of scenarios could work in this way. So the Ravens are guaranteed a postseason berth. So even if they lose, right? Let's play out that scenario, as wild as that would be, because Lamar is definitely still playing in this game, because the first seed, or the division's on the line right here. Because if the Browns beat the Ravens and the Steelers win against Cincinnati, the Ravens would then be the 5th seed, going back to Houston for their first postseason game, for the wild card game. If the Bengals win and the Browns win, the Steelers would be the 7th seed and the Ravens would be the 3rd seed. So even if the Bengals win and the Ravens still lose, we would automatically win the division. And we would host the Denver Broncos. But what I think is going to happen is that the Ravens are going to win and the Bengals are going to win. And what that means is nothing changes at all. We still host the Broncos. In the off chance that the Steelers do beat the Bengals and the Ravens win, the Chargers would come to Baltimore and the Steelers would go to Houston. So a couple of different scenarios here. Some more likely than others, obviously. The Ravens beating the Browns is the more likely thing, and then the Bengals beating the Steelers, I think, is more likely. But really all that changes is if the Steelers lose. If the Steelers lose, we face Denver. If the Steelers win, we face the Chargers. Who you'd rather face, I don't know. We'll talk about that when we get there. We got to see how those teams do in week 17, what the health of the team looks like going into week 18 and beyond. Things could change quickly in the NFL. But that's what the pathway sort of looks like. But yeah, this team looks fantastic. This team looks explosive. The defense is dominant. We're getting sacks. We're getting turnovers. And again, in this game, no fumbles, right? Right? Let me double check. No fumbles. And we just basically controlled this entire game. I mean, every single statistical aspect. This team is dominant. I don't care who they face. I don't care if it's the Chargers. I don't care if it's the Broncos. I don't care how it works out. If anybody's coming to the bank, they do not want to face Baltimore, and they're going to be going home in the first round, whoever it is. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to some time off, a mini bye week after this really, sort of, again, regardless of whether or not the Ravens were dominant, 3 games in 10 days is a lot to ask of these guys at this point in the season. So to see them still with this energy, this enthusiasm, give them a nice big rest before we face off again in 2025 against the Browns, and we'll see how they look. But yeah, that's gonna do it for me, guys. I hope you guys had a great Christmas. I hope you guys have a safe and healthy New Year. I will be out, like I said, with the next maybe a couple of highlight videos, and then next week we'll do the Browns preview, and then it's the postseason. So have yourselves a good day, a good rest of your week. Travel safely if you travel, and don't forget to like the video if you enjoy, subscribe, and turn notifications on if you're new around here. Comment your thoughts on the game. That's about it. So, as always, guys, stay safe out there and go Ravens.